started as a simple favor. My friend Sarah was heading out of town for a long weekend and needed someone to watch her house and her dog, Max. I had pet sat for her before, so I had no problem agreeing. I'd done it plenty of times, and she lived in a quiet neighborhood. Nothing ever happened there. At least, that's what I thought. The first night was uneventful. Max was a sweetheart, and the house was comfortable. I made myself at home, watched some TV, and eventually went to bed in the guest room. Around 2 a.m., I woke up to the sound of scratching. At first, I thought it was Max at the door, but when I called his name, I heard his collar jingle from the living room. My stomach tightened. The scratching wasn't coming from inside the house, it was coming from outside, near the back door. I told myself it was probably just a stray cat or some animal passing through. I tried to go back to sleep, but a nagging feeling kept me on edge. The second night, things got worse. I was settling in, scrolling through my phone when I heard it again, scratching, but this time it was followed by slow, deliberate tapping against the glass patio door. My pulse spiked. Max sat up, his ears perked, staring at the door. I grabbed my phone, hesitated for a second, and then turned on the flashlight. I walked cautiously to the patio door and shined the light outside. At first, I saw nothing. Just darkness. Then, as my eyes adjusted, I saw it. A figure, standing just beyond the fence line. It wasn't moving, just watching. My stomach churned as I fumbled to lock the patio door, even though it was already locked. Max started growling, a deep, rumbling sound that I had never heard from him before. My hands were shaking as I pulled the curtains shut and backed away. I barely slept that night. On the third night, I was on high alert. Every sound made my heart race. I locked all the doors, double-checked the windows, and kept my phone close. I told myself it was just my imagination, that maybe it was someone passing by and they wouldn't return. But I was wrong. At exactly 3 a.m., Max started barking uncontrollably. My heart pounded as I reached for my phone. Then I heard something that made my blood turn cold. A whisper, right outside the window. It was so quiet I almost thought I imagined it. But then I heard it again. A low, raspy voice whispering my name. I grabbed Max's collar and ran to the front of the house, heart pounding in my chest. I didn't care if I woke the neighbors. I needed to get out of there. As I fumbled with my keys, something banged against the back door. Hard. I yanked the front door open and bolted to my car, dragging Max with me. I locked the doors, my hands trembling as I dialed 911. The police arrived within minutes. They searched the property but found nothing. No footprints, no signs of forced entry. Just the back door, rattling slightly in the wind. Sarah never had any problems before, and when she returned, nothing else happened. But I know what I heard. I know what I saw. And to this day, I wonder, if I had stayed just a little longer, what would have happened? It started as a simple favor. My friend Sarah was heading out of town for a long weekend and needed someone to watch her house and her dog, Max. I had pet sat for her before, so I had no problem agreeing. I'd done it plenty of times, and she lived in a quiet neighborhood. Nothing ever happened there. At least, that's what I thought. The first night was uneventful. Max was a sweetheart, and the house was comfortable. I made myself at home, watched some TV, and eventually went to bed in the guest room. Around 2 a.m., I woke up to the sound of scratching. At first, I thought it was Max at the door, but when I called his name, I heard his collar jingle from the living room. My stomach tightened. The scratching wasn't coming from inside the house, it was coming from outside, near the back door. I told myself it was probably just a stray cat or some animal passing through. I tried to go back to sleep, but a nagging feeling kept me on edge. The second night, things got worse. I was settling in, scrolling through my phone when I heard it again. Scratching, but this time it was followed by slow, deliberate tapping against the glass patio door. My pulse spiked. Max sat up, his ears perked, staring at the door. I grabbed my phone, hesitated for a second, and then turned on the flashlight. I walked cautiously to the patio door and shined the light outside. At first, I saw nothing, just darkness. Then, as my eyes adjusted, I saw it, a figure. Standing just beyond the fence line. It wasn't moving, just watching. My stomach churned as I fumbled to lock the patio door, even though it was already locked. Max started growling, a deep, rumbling sound that I had never heard from him before. My hands were shaking as I pulled the curtains shut and backed away. I barely slept that night. On the third night, I was on high alert. Every sound made my heart race. I locked all the doors, double-checked the windows, and kept my... I'm a 20-year-old guy. I work at a medium-sized hospital in Northwest Alabama as a pharmacy technician. I work an early night shift, 6 p.m. to 4 a.m. I'm also in charge of stocking the surgery rooms. I work for 7 days in a row, and then I have 7 days off. Working the 7 sucks, but the 7 even off feels amazing. I work Thursday through Wednesday, and on my 6th night working, a Tuesday, I left a little early to go stay with my wife at her aunt's house about 30 minutes away from our house. She was babysitting her little cousins while her aunt and uncle were on a trip. House didn't have any curtains, so she felt uneasy for the few nights she was there. I didn't go with her at first because it was during my work week, and she told me there was really no point if I was going to get there around 5 a.m. and then go to sleep once the sun started to rise. But on her last night babysitting, she felt extremely anxious. So I told her I was coming over. She is stubborn, but she thanked me and felt so much better once I arrived. Working the night shift for the last 2 years has really taken a toll on me mentally, and I think I've started to develop some slight insomnia. I literally could not go to sleep after getting to my wife's aunt's house. This isn't anything new, but I had never stayed up for more than about 28 hours. Before, even if I wanted to, I couldn't sleep because we had a really big day ahead of us. We had to drop her little cousins off at school. Our friend was shaving a gender reveal party. We had to go shopping because we had no groceries at home since she had been away for the last 3 days and I had to be at work at 6. He ended up falling asleep in the car for a little less than 10 minutes. I was really feeling that wave of sleepiness come over me, but ended up getting a huge Red Bull and another energy drink on. I got to work. I had my wife drive me to work and pick me up since my brakes needed to be changed. And I wasn't driving my car, and also because neither of us trusted myself to drive her car in over 24 hours of no sleep. It was Wednesday night now, and I had been awake since about 2 p.m. On Tuesday afternoon, my shift started out fine. If I could stay busy, that tired feeling wouldn't really get to me. I put in my earbuds and was listening to music. As I was stuck in the surgery rooms with their meds, it was a weeknights. Other were still some late surgeries finishing up, and housekeeping was cleaning up some operating rooms that had been used. It's not uncommon for surgery personnel to come into the room. I was in and grabbed something that the room they were using may be out of. So I usually turn around and at least smile, and they smile back. I was in my own little world stalking the Omnicell machine with meds and listening to music when I heard the door behind me open. There was that distinct thigh-pitch squeal when a door needs its hinges to be oiled, made the loud crash that heavy wood and doors make when they shuts. So it turned around to see who it was, like always, except there was noon there. I didn't really get worried about it. Maybe they opened the door and saw I was in there and just decided to go to another room, so I continued on as I pushed my cart to the next room. The light in this room was off. I opened the door and saw someone hunched over by the Omnicell machine digging through the sharp spin. If you don't know what that is, it's a bin where you dispose of needles and vials after use. Instead of just putting them in a normal garbage can, someone had already been caught doing this before in search of morphine, and consequently was fired. It turned on the light. I was going to ask what they were doing, but when I turned the light on, there was no one there. Okay, now I was starting to get a little creeped out. I didn't know the time frame of when you could start hallucinating after not sleeping for over 24 hours. So I just told myself I was probably seeing things I needed to just down. I finished up stocking surgery with no other occurrences and headed back to the pharma. CI at 2 a.m. Every night we have to deliver patient-specific medications to the nurse's station. I'm going to use the 5th floor as an example of how the floors are laid out, but each floor number corresponds with which floor they were on. The rear 3 elevators in the middle of the floor. If I go left when getting off the elevator, there's the 5100 and 5200 side. And if you got to the right, there's the 5400 55er side. There are 2 wings, one each side. Southern air patient rooms numbered 5105 to 5115. The other wing has rooms 5201 to 5250. Each floor is laid out the exact Same ways, each wing has 15 rooms on each side. To shorten the floor names though, I'm going to refer to the mass 5152 and 5455 recently. The 5th floor, specifically the 5455 side, had been undergoing some remodelings or overflow floor. The 3rd floor was where they put the patients who were on the 5455 side of the 5th floor, while they remodeled the 5455 side was empty. Because there weren't that many people in the hospital that night, it made me way up the hospital delivering meds to the nurses station floor by floor, and I got to the 5th floor. I went to the 5152 side, delivered the meds, and decided to go check out the progress of the 5455 side. As I went over there, I just got creeped out. There were no nurses, no patients, just the long empty hallways. The surgery rooms are already empty and desolate most nights, so I'm used to walking around down the no problem, but seeing empty patient rooms just creeped me out. I walked slowly down the 55 side. I heard a noise that sounded like one of the hospital beds rattling as I passed 5512. I quickly found out what that noise was. I looked into the rooms. Is an old man violently shaking, as if he was having a seizure. Blood was running down his eyes, nose, and out of his mouth. He was making this gargling, groaning sound, almost like the sounds the zombies in The Walking Dead make. A monitor was frantically beeping like it does when a patient is coding. My heart dropped when I saw this, and it took a quick step behind the door frame. I immediately stepped back into the room, as I realized this man was in desperate need of medical attention. But when I looked back, in there was no man, that this bed was clean and made, the monitor was off, and there were no signs that anyone had even been in that room for at least a whole day. I thought at that point I was for sure hallucinating. I quickly made my back over to the elevators, and I made my way back down to the 1st floor, where the pharmacy is. As the elevator doors open, an old man in a security shirt and hospital badge got on the elevator. He patted my shoulder as she walked past me. Was that same man I had seen moments before having a seizure and making those zombie-like noise. She smiled at me. The doors closed, and I watched the numbers on the elevator go all the way up to the 5th floor. I didn't push the button for the elevator to come back down, but the same elevator came back down to the 1st floor and opened. There was noon on the elevator. I ran back to the pharmacy and sat in a chair for the rest of my shift until my wife came and picked me up. As I was waiting, I googled when hallucinations start. When you haven't slept, it said between 30 and 48 hours, and I was on hour 38 of no sleep, so it made sense. The pharmacy's located directly under the 5455 side, so when I walk in, I can see the window at the end of the hospital wing on the 24, 3, 4, 4, 4, and 54 sides. Sometimes as I wait on the elevator on that side to go back down to the pharmacy, I look out the window as I was walking out to my wife's car. I looked back up at the 5th floor window and saw the same old man looking at me through the window. I got shells as I got into my wife's car. I didn't say anything about what I saw that night. I'm not sure why I would have hallucinated that specific man, as I've never seen him before. And even if I have, he has no significance in my life whatsoever. I'm still not sure though, if that was even a hallucination or if what I saw that night was real. It certainly felt real. I went to sleep immediately after getting home. I've not seen that man again, but this was just under 2 weeks ago. Phone close. I told myself it was just my imagination, that maybe it was someone passing by and they wouldn't return. But I was wrong. At exactly 3 a.m., Max started barking uncontrollably. My heart pounded as I reached for my phone. Then I heard something that made my blood turn cold. A whisper. Right outside the window. It was so quiet, I almost thought I imagined it. But then I heard it again, a low, raspy voice whispering my name. I grabbed Max's collar and ran to the front of the house, heart pounding in my chest. I didn't care if I woke the neighbors. I needed to get out of there. As I fumbled with my keys, something banged against the back door. Hard. I yanked the front door open and bolted to my car, dragging Max with me. I locked the doors, my hands trembling as I dialed 911. The police arrived within minutes. They searched the property but found nothing. No footprints, no signs of forced entry. Just the back door, rattling slightly in the wind. Sarah never had any problems before, and when she returned, nothing else happened. But I know what I heard. I know what I saw. And to this day, I wonder, if I had stayed just a little longer, what would have happened? I live with my boyfriend in the house he owns. It's a modest home in a nice neighborhood where crime is low and the streets are quiet. The house itself is a 3-bedroom, 2-bath, single-story house with a basement. The way the street curves gives us a lot of privacy, None of the neighboring houses directly face ours. There are only 8 houses on our block, and at the end of the street is a small wooded area. One weekend last October, my boyfriend was away in Vegas for a bachelor party, leaving me alone from Thursday to Monday. On Friday night, I invited some friends over for a wine night. We laughed, drank, and watched scary movies in the living room. At some point, the doorbell rang, and we all went silent. It was almost cliché, the doorbell ringing late at night while watching a horror film. I quietly walked to the front door to check who it was. From the small glass panel at the top of the door, I peeked outside. The driveway was filled with cars from my friends, so whoever was out there had to know people were home. But when I looked, no one was there. We decided it must have been a prank or a simple ding-dong ditch. After my friends left, I went to bed, but less than an hour later, I was jolted awake by the doorbell ringing twice. My heart pounded as I grabbed my phone. It was 1 a.m. No one should be at my door at this hour. I called my boyfriend, who was at a noisy bar, and he drunkenly told me to stay put and not open the door. He never suggested calling the police, so I refrained. I was just starting to calm down when I heard it, a clicking sound from outside. Then a knock at my bedroom window. A deep male voice spoke softly. "Hey, anyone home? I need some help." I thanked every instinct that I had closed the blinds. I couldn't see him, and he couldn't see me. But then he knocked again and said, "I know you're home." That was enough. I called the police immediately, whispering into the phone. I never heard the man walk away, so I didn't know if he was still outside. The minutes crawled by. Then the doorbell rang again, followed by loud knocking. My heart nearly stopped. A voice on the other side said, "It's the police." I hesitated. Was it really them? I peeked through the glass panel and confirmed it was 2 officers. I opened the door, but before I could say anything, the taller officer stepped inside without asking. He was rude from the start, dismissive, almost irritated. I explained the situation, but he cut me off multiple times, acting as if I had wasted their time. His partner stood silently in the background. When I admitted I hadn't seen the man's face, only heard his voice, the officer scoffed. "So you don't even know what he looks like?" he asked sarcastically. "Ma'am, if you don't want our help, we can leave." I was stunned. I wasn't sure what I had done wrong. I simply apologized, feeling small under his scrutiny. He and his partner lazily walked around the house with flashlights, barely checking anything. When they came back, they told me there wasn't much they could do. "If you don't have cameras or proof, there's nothing we can report," the officer said. Then they left. I locked every door and window and went back to bed. The only thing that gave me comfort was the hope that whoever had been outside saw the police and decided to leave. Saturday night, I attended a Halloween party at my friend's house. I was dressed as Velma from Scooby-Doo and my friend, Daphne. The party lasted late, and I didn't leave until after 1 a.m. I was completely sober and drove home alone. The moment I walked in, I noticed something was off. There was a cool draft in the house. Setting my things down on the dining table, I realized the living room window was open. A chill ran down my spine. I knew I hadn't opened it. I went to shut it, my mind racing, trying to remember if I had left it open by mistake. Then, as I turned to leave the room, I noticed something else. The basement door was open. I stopped breathing. I never opened that door. My heart pounded as I took a step toward it, listening carefully. That's when I heard it, a faint clicking sound from the basement. It was slow, rhythmic, coming from deep within the darkness below. I reached for my phone with shaking hands, inching toward the basement stairs. As I got closer, the clicking sound stopped. Then a voice, low and amused, spoke from the darkness below. "You're finally home." I slammed the door shut and ran outside. My phone gripped so tightly my fingers hurt. I banged on my neighbor's door until he answered. He barely had time to react before I ran inside and called the police. The same 2 officers arrived. This time, my neighbor stayed with me while I spoke to them. The rude officer was noticeably more restrained, likely because I had a witness this time. They searched the house thoroughly, checking every closet, every possible hiding place, but whoever had been there was gone. As I packed a bag to stay with my sister for the night, I stayed on the phone with my drunk boyfriend, trying to process what had happened. Before leaving, I checked the locks on every window. I knew I had locked them before, but this time, I made sure. We still live in this house today, but I refuse to stay alone overnight anymore. For months, I avoided being home by myself. I still have nightmares, dreams of hearing knocks at my window or whispers outside my door. And the worst part is, I never found out who he was or how long he had been inside my house before I got home that night.